It's truly the Carter years all over again. This is nuts. So I'm doing some research, and I came across this article, which is pretty. It's not an article; it's a law piece from 19. Man, hold on just a second. Let me get to it right here. Road to subprime hell was paved with good congressional intentions. Usury deregulation in subprime home equity market. This is from a lady from Drake University Law School, September 2000. Very interesting because back in the day, there were usury laws that were overridden by Supreme Court and federal congressional action. And I wanted to see if there actually. Let me show you what I'm talking about. We'll circle back around. I'm going to give you an economic history here. I think it's important to understand, especially as you're, oh my goodness, the world's falling, because we've been through this before. All right, check this out. And here's from Senator Proxmire. And if memory serves, wasn't he Wisconsin? I forgot. But anyway, the legislation preempts state home mortgage lending limits, which are responsible for mortgage money drying up in many areas of the country. The Senate report continues. The committee finds that where states' usury laws require mortgage rates below market levels of interest, mortgage funds in those states will not be readily available, and those funds will flow to other states where market yields are available. This artificial disruption of funds availability not only is harmful to potential home buyers in states with such laws, it also frustrates national housing policies. He added, we have a situation now where the rate is getting so high that many banks and savings and loans simply cannot offer mortgages or they violate the law. In some cases, it is embedded in the Constitution as a constitutional amendment in that various state. In others, it is very difficult for the legislator to meet and act on it. This gives them a chance to start again. Anyway, the point being was that you had let me show you real quick. We find that there are a number of states in which it makes it virtually impossible to get a mortgage loan. Isn't that interesting? All right, so they can hold on a second, do this, which is allow preempt states with their usury laws by a statute or if it's a constitutional amendment to their state. They're saying the state legislature can violate all that and just go back to with enacting a law to recreate the usury laws. But we're going to basically give a clean slate in which to do that. We do this because we found the state of Arkansas an absolute disaster. As far as the financial institutions were concerned, and particularly for the borrowers were concerned, small businessmen, farmers, and other mortgage borrowers who wanted to borrow money simply could not get the funds. At least if interest rates are too high, you can decide whether to borrow at the high rate or not. But in the case of Arkansas, they could not borrow at all. In many states, this senator has pointed out that the position in which borrowers has found themselves, i.e., we could not find loans because the interest rates were too high. The market rates were much higher than the usury laws allowed in Texas and Arkansas. And actually, it's pretty interesting because you go back through newspapers.com, you can see that all the house sales in Arkansas said assumable mortgage. Very interesting. Anyway, and there's always going to be an unintended consequence, which there was, but I'm not blaming these guys for enacting that legislation ought to deregulate the interest rates. Anyway, so what are we talking about here? So that's the premise where I'm reading this, and I said, there is some legitimacy of the need to deregulate the interest rates. And so I'm reading that. I just want to see what the boots on the ground in the various local newspapers said. And again, going back to Arkansas, assumable loans and whatnot. But then I came across this piece in Texas, and this is an AP report. It's from Odessa, Texas. It's just AP. It has nothing to do specifically with Odessa, Texas. What I did is I put mortgages in 1979. I just want to see, and I did Texas and Arkansas because they both had usury rates, and I wanted to see, what the state of the economy was. And it's actually interesting. There's a lot of truth in there. You could see that because of usury laws, people were very worried that they weren't going to have enough money to loan out because their usury laws were 10%, and the mortgage rates at that time were much higher than 10%. And it was very interesting. And I don't know. I don't have a solution. I just know it's incredibly interesting to watch and to remember a history of how this shook out and what led to the savings loan debacle in the 80s and then later on to the 2008 global financial recession. And you can pinpoint it to 1,000 different things a Sunday, but it all just kind of flows. It's incredibly interesting. So I came across this article. I'm just going to read it because it's literally what we're dealing with today. It's nuts, man. Economy leaves mark. Economic developments in 1978 left their mark on all of us, and nickels and dimes for more grocery items and gasoline, and more jobs from expanding businesses. And for a few, fortunes were won and lost in a stock market roller coaster. Inflation was its worst in 4 years, but employment was its best. And the combination of high prices and more people working produced some surprising developments. Construction of new homes continued at a near record pace, which increased the average cost of a home by $7,000 a year. I forgot what the price was on average home back then. Let's take a look. All right, so here's in 1978, $59,000 was the median sales price. Then it went up to about $7,000. Yeah, right about there. So they're saying it went up $7,000. That's just median sales price of all homes sold. So it doesn't necessarily mean everything, but still. If you're and that's median, not average. But we're just going to use it. We're going to say 1978, the end of 1978, it was $59,000. So $7,000 divided by 59,000 is an 12% increase in prices. And it's not quite an apples to apples comparison. Well, sue me. All right, so anyway, but that's a significant increase nonetheless, all right? Even though mortgage interest rates were, we'll keep going back right there. Some areas mortgage caught 11%. 11%. Isn't that interesting? Let's see. And then there's actually very interesting. The October massacre on the stock market when worries over the dollar inflation and possible recession sent the market into a 2-week slide. Be interesting to see what the markets did in 1978, we actually were up. Let's take a look. Weird. In 1978, the markets were up 6.4%. Interesting. With inflation rate of 7.6%. So we lost money net of inflation, but I just love going back into history. I just wonder how much it actually fell in 1978. Can't find it. Go back to 1978. I didn't research that hard, frankly. But anyway, here's 1980. The market ended up, but yet in 1980, at one point it was down 17%. So anyway, let's keep going because that's interesting. So they had another October massacre. Never heard that before. If only they could see the future. Let's see. The medicine to fight 1978 inflation and the sinking dollar. That's the difference. Back then, the dollar was sinking relative to currencies. Now it's the exact opposite. So check this out. The medicine to fight 1978 inflation, the sinking dollar, higher interest rates and wage and price guidelines, not control, but guidelines, is expected to result in slower economic growth next year, perhaps a recession for at least part of 1979. Let me show you what happens with a sinking dollar. An imported Japanese Toyota, which cost $3,048 a year ago, now costs 23% more at $3,748. That is a sinking dollar, all right? Interesting. While major dollar defense program by the government brought the dollar back from a record October lows, its recovery by year's end was still only partial. Someone vacationing in West Germany now would get about 13% less in currency exchange than he would a year ago. You're getting that? That's the difference. Now the imports we're bringing from foreign countries are a heck of a lot cheaper right now in today's days, in 2022, than they were a year ago because the dollar is rising. Now it's a hell of a lot cheaper to go overseas and vacaciones than it was a year ago because the dollar is rising. That's the difference. Anyway, going back to what I'm going to hold my tongue on some economists who should know better, who are saying, oh, no, we didn't do anything to fight inflation until Volcker came around. It's just clown show, man, because I'm going to show you. And they say, it was never the raising of interest rates that beat inflation. It was always the tightening of the money supply we should do. Okay, really? All right, so let's keep going. Let's see. And the medicine may prove bitter for both employment and housing, two areas of the economy that have historically been vulnerable to economic slowdowns and recessions. In summary, inflation in 1978, in the broadest sense, cost about $1.08 to buy at the end of the year what a dollar would have bought in January, because inflation was a culprit, and it hit with surprising vengeance. At this time last year, the Carter administration was projecting inflation about 6%, but it hit 10% for several months before easing off in recent months. Right? Still, the 8 to 9% increase in consumer prices was the worst performance in 4 years and prompted the Carter administration to pose a wage and price program designed to bring inflation down. anytime you impose price controls, it's going to bring scarcity, which inherently brings inflation. This one just ticks me off, this whole thing with Paul Volcker. I mean, I got no animosity towards the guy, but for some reason that guy's like, oh, Volcker. They got rid of wage and price controls. Thus, the inflation came down. It's just that freaking economists don't understand this. They say, well, Reagan cut taxes. No, he got rid of wage and price controls. Maggie Thatcher got rid of all that crap. Nothing to do with cutting taxes. No, I mean, look, cut taxes, sure, stimulate growth, absolutely. But if you want to reduce inflation, you get rid of price controls, man. Jeez, so obvious. You bring the prices up to market levels. You're creating this false freaking ceiling that people aren't going to build because they can't get paid enough to build the product that is on what is being held below as a price from what the market demands. And to do that, Carter issued voluntary guidelines designed to limit wage increases to 7% and average price increases to 5 3/4. Okay, based on some economists. When did Paul Volcker take over, by the way? Hold on a second. All right, so Volcker came chair in 1979. Was he on the board? Volcker had nothing to do with anything because he wasn't chair until 1979, even though he was previously president of the Federal Reserve in New York. That is the number one. That's the freaking AAA baseball of everyone who exceeds or rises to become the chairman of the board. But he had nothing to do with it. The Federal Reserve, nothing to do with it. No, he was just the president of the Federal Reserve of New York. The second in command. The idea that Paul Volcker wasn't part of this stuff, and he was from 1975 to 1979. By the way, I just want to point out something here. You'll see what's kind of funny. And anytime you see this, run for the freaking hills, man. Hold on a second. Hold on. Here you go. London School of Economics. That's all you got to know. He went to LSE, and so I'm trying my best to bite my tongue. The level of worship of this guy is nuts, man. Anyway, let's keep going here. All right, so, your breath stinks. Is it my breath? And another way to fight inflation, the Federal Reserve, of which Paul Volcker was the president of the New York Fed, the second in command. Put the squeeze on the nation's money supply to cool demand for credit and cash. Remember, we were just talking about an economist from the right-wing side who says, we always got to reduce the M2. If we reduce M2, that will fight inflation. It's not raising of interest rates. They're just changing the terms behind it. So which is why we got to keep the term recession. Can't change the recession based on politics, man. The term. You got to keep the term. Words mean things. Let's just put it that way. Words mean things. And you got to keep the definitions so that way we can apply. We know a home run hit in 1888 is a home run hit now. Now, you could say the argument is different if the ballpark was only 50 feet or what. You get all that. But you still know what a home run means. It means the same thing. A guy is at the home plate, hits the ball into fair play, and circles the bases without being tagged out. That's a home run. You got to keep that. All right, let's keep going. All right, so anyway, we did try to reduce the money supply to cool demand for credit and cash. The prime rate, a basic corporate loan rate, was an indicator of general trends, rose to 11 3/4%, which was up from 7 3/4%. But they weren't raising the interest rates enough. Obviously, they needed to go to 20% under Volcker. I will. Two things as my mission in life, other than raising my kids and worshiping God. Number one is to tell you can retire. Just 100%, man. 100%. Get you out of the corporate freaking craziness that is, Number two is to dismantle the allure of Paul Volcker. I'm telling you, man. All right, we are talking about the average price. In some areas, mortgages cost over 11%. Yeah, in some areas, what is this? The average price of a new home rose almost $7,000, and the cost of mortgage reaches high. Okay, I guess in 1974. So the average mortgage reaches highest since 1974-75. So basically 5 years previously. In some areas, mortgage cost 11%, as banks and savings and loans found themselves with fewer funds for lending. Yet continued strong demand for loans for homes. On a national rate, the mortgage was close to 10% at year end. All right. The cost of a new home rose from $58,000 to $65,000. There you go. Despite that, about 2 million homes were built and 4 million more existing homes were resold. 2 million homes were built. I want to show you something here. Here we are, 1978. This is housing starts. 2 million homes in 1978. 1970s. 1980s. Mortgage rates were way high. 2007. 2022. What's the population from 1978 till today? Let's take a look. The population in 1978 in the United States was 225 million. It's up 33% from then. It's at 330 million now. And yet, if you look at the house, this is why there's not going to be a housing market bubble pop, because it's stupid. You got one new housing starts at 5 million or something like that. And that's as of what, 2022. Yeah, 1.59 million, which is surprising on the upside. And yet we had over 2 million in 1978 when they had a population size that's 33% less. And you can say all day long, whether baby boomers and baby busters, it doesn't matter. You still have 33% more people living in the United States, which means 33% more people need housing. All right, let's keep going because it's just silly, man. Energy prices. Price of gasoline and home heating oil rose, especially near year end when the unusually high demand caused shortages. Shell and Standard Oil of Indiana were forced to ration the amount of gasoline they sold to dealers. The price of gas, about 62 cents a gallon at the end of the year, rose to 68 cents by year's end, at the beginning of the year. So it went from, basically rose 10%. The price of heating oil rose another 10%. Nothing weird about that, just like we're doing today. Talk about OPEC jobs, but here we go. Employment provided one of the economic bright spots in 1978. The unemployment rate of less than 6% was down from 6.4. So we can't call it a recession because people got jobs. Yeah, but they were calling it pretty close to a recession. All right, so that was it but we didn't have negative earning. We didn't have negative GDP. That's the issue. Because we have negative GDP, it's a recession. It's just that simple, man. You can't change the definition after fact. That was accomplished at the same time that more than 3 million additional workers were absorbed through new jobs, swelling the nation's workforce to close to 100 million people. And the trend of more women in the workforce reached a benchmark in the fall. More than half of all adult women are now in the workforce and represent 1/3 of the total labor force. So what is the labor? We got 1 million labor force. Let's take a look at what it is now. So the labor force before the pandemic was 165 million. We'll just say it's 150 now. It doesn't matter. So the labor force is up 50%. 50% from what it was in 1978. All right. But the housing starts are down basically 30% from what it was in 2008. Doesn't make any sense. That's not a housing bubble. I don't care what anybody says. So it's not a housing bubble. Doesn't mean prices can't fall, but just give me a break, dudes. But the mortgage rates are going to pop the housing bubble. Okay, talk to me in 1978. Didn't happen. All right. Let's see. But with signs that economic growth may slow, that's not a recession because it's growing, and even dip into a mild recession in 1979, many economists were predicting that the employment situation would suffer. The economy grew at a 3.5% to 4% rate this year, but next year many economists predict a slowdown to 2% or less, which would include a mild recession. All right, of course, that didn't happen. All right, so we didn't have a recession until 1982, and you could probably say because of Volcker. The fall of the dollar on international currency markets was part of the inflation picture that had far-reaching impacts on the domestic economy. While people traveling abroad felt the effects most directly, it also meant price increases for imported goods. Yeah, we talked about that. All right. So there you go, man. The whole freaking nut stuff that we're literally just going back to 1970s, except we have a strong dollar and less houses available. And not less people in the workforce, but it's a different workforce. There's just no two ways around that. And, I don't know what to make of that, but if you have a strong dollar, we still have low interest rates, dudes. Let's take a look what the 30-year is doing right now. We have about 5.5 or so. Is that what we're looking at? 5.5, 5.4. I'm not sure how many points that is. Let's see what else we got. Hold on a second. Even with a refi, it looks about 5.4. All right, so we're looking at 30-year mortgage rates of 5.4. All right, so that is higher from what it was, for a couple months there at 2%. Oh my, yeah, but good luck getting that loan, man. I didn't refinance simply because I didn't want to go through the cost, which is about $20,000 to refinance. That's the equivalent of 7 months of mortgage payments. I'm not doing that. But anyway, long story short, the rates are still quite low historically. That's just a fact, man. Anything else we talk about that? Yeah, okay, good. So we're just right back to where we were in 1978. Did people survive? Yes. Did people have a home? Yes. Did people have higher costs? Yes. Did people make do 100%? So, take it as you will, man. But we're literally reliving this. And of course, what they're going to do is they're say, we got to tighten the money supply. Okay, well, have they not been doing that? And yet the dollar's going up, up, up. We got to raise interest rates. Well, they raised them hell of a lot more than they did in 1978, and yet the friggin' economy is still inflating. I wonder why that is. Shocking. Actually, let's just take a look at something. So the dollar is still about close to parity with the euro, so that hasn't changed much. Let's just see what it's done to, if anything, we'll say the Japanese yen. We still have a huge trading partner with Japan. I just want you guys to know that. It's not like Japan's. I know we talk a lot about Japan here, but it's not like it's a small economy. Yeah, and so that's kind of leveled off a little bit. It went from the 138 yen to 133, but still, the dollar is growing, man. Let's go to British pound. I think we got to go to, is it right there? Or is it way, actually, what is Bitcoin? I haven't looked at Bitcoin for a while. Bitcoin, hey, look at it. Bitcoin's coming up on 23. Yay for them. They don't care. UK pound, isn't it under UK? Maybe not. Let me, or is it the, hold on a sec. The South Korea, that's interesting, man. So South Korea was, what is it? Some significant strengthening here in the last year or so. That is weird. What's happening there? Well, that's actually pretty interesting to me. I have some significant strengthening. What's going on there? The sterling pound, that's what it's called, sterling. But I don't know if they call it British. What the hell is a British pound? Sterling pound. Yeah, pound sterling, and so that's strengthened quite a bit too over the last. That is weird, man. What is that? That's Bitcoin. How did I get on Bitcoin? No wonder why that was all jacked up. Okay, so scratch what I just said about South Korea and British pound. I was like, why did Bitcoin get over there? I don't even know. So let's go to U.S. The U.S. dollar, the only game in town, man, right there. All right, there we go. I was like, that doesn't make it. Yeah, there we go. So the dollar's, so basically tracking with the pound pretty significantly. It was at a dollar could buy 71 cents of British pound back in August last year. Now it can buy 82 cents. That's a pretty significant increase. Let me look at South Korea because obviously I jumped the shark there. I was like, that didn't make any sense. So that was just obviously because of the. Actually, let me just go to South Korea real quick, and then we'll come back to Russian ruble. Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, there we go. All right, so the dollar has increased in value against the South Korea. All right, phew. I was like, dude, what is going on? All right, go to Russia. Ruskies. How dare they? How dare they? Oh, man, look at that. The ruble, remember Biden said we're crushing the ruble. It went from a dollar could buy 75 rubles all the way up to 120. 135, and now it's back down to 59. So actually, the ruble is stronger than it was last year. Such a clown show. In fact, the ruble is stronger than it was going back to 2012. It looks like. No, I guess not. Let's see. The ruble's at 59. Going back to basically the last 7-8 years or so. All right, my friends, love to hear your thoughts. You guys got anything to add? Let me see them. But, panic if you want. Just recognize we've all been through this before. No matter what the government does, they're not going to solve any problems to you. They just can't. There's always a law of unintended consequence. Sorry, Mike. This is an old T-shirt, by the way. So if you're wondering, what I'm going to do next time? There's a guy out there who wants me to wear a necktie. I'm going to wear a necktie for you, just for you, guy. All right, we'll see you guys. Love to hear your thoughts.